Thank you all for y'all's patience. Good afternoon. This afternoon we stand together with Deputy Superintendent Nick Gernon, along with other members of the NOPD who were in there during that trial, who served with Trevor Abney. We also have my co-counsel in this case, the lead attorney, Assistant District Attorney William Dieter, and the entire prosecution team to announce the guilty as charged verdicts against Donnell Hassell for the death of NOPD Officer Trevor Abney and the attempted murder of his partner on that day, Officer Brooke Duncan. All of our hearts are with Officer Duncan right now, who himself narrowly avoided significant injury and death as he nurtures a new addition to his family. He's out on paternity leave. The family of Officer Abney's strength was with us every step of the way in this investigation and in this prosecution. I know, because of my conversations with his family, his parents, his brother, his sister-in-law, his wife, that they, along with his colleagues and the people of New Orleans, recognize the deep significance of these guilty verdicts. A unanimous Orleans Parish jury held him, Donnell Hassell, fully accountable, returning guilty as charged verdicts on every single count, including second-degree murder, attempted second-degree murder, and the illegal discharge of a firearm during a violent crime. The verdict is a powerful testament to the indelible partnerships between the District Attorney's Office and the NOPD and our collective pursuits for justice. Officer Abney, alongside his partner, Officer Duncan, served this community with honor and integrity. Their parents, their families sacrificed them every day they put on that uniform and stepped out into this community. And even as he fought to recover from the traumatic injuries that ultimately claimed his life, he remained dedicated to the oath to protect and serve. Officer Abney was not only a steadfast public servant, but he was a beloved son, brother, friend, and colleague. His life was tragically cut short in a deliberate and calculated attack by Donnell Hassell. This man knew why he came to New Orleans. This man knew what he was planning on that day. He had other weapons, and if it was not for the quick work of the NOPD, I believe others would have been injured. Although we were not able to discuss that in the trial, the men and women of the NOPD saved many lives on this day. Donnell Hassell's actions were deliberate, they were violent, and they were entirely unprovoked, with no prior contact with these officers, with no motive other than hate. He fired 12 rounds into the NOPD cruiser occupied by Officer Abney and Officer Brooke, striking Officer Abney in the face and ultimately taking his life. The jury heard the evidence put together by William Dieter. It was an honor to stand next to you and to try this case with you, William. It's a very complicated case because Officer Abney didn't die from the injuries right away, although he was struck in the face, and that makes it complicated for a jury to see. But the jury saw through the defense's attempts to distort his actions as a result of some sort of voluntary intoxication or temporary delirium and recognized this as a targeted ambush of two dedicated officers during a very tough 2020 for us all. Securing this verdict took a team with unwavering dedication and resolve. I want to especially thank Officer Brooke Duncan again, who survived this attack, but I have no idea how. I also want to acknowledge the unwavering support of Superintendent Ann Kirkpatrick and the New Orleans Police Department as they have stood shoulder to shoulder with us in this case, as they have with countless cases before. But this outcome reflects the deep and unprecedented level of partnership between our offices today. That collaboration, the rigorous investigation, and the commitment to the people of this community. I'd now like to call up Detective Nick Gernon. Commander Nick Gernon. I apologize. It's been a long night. Deputy Chief Gernon has served this department in many facets. He served as a detective, he's commanded in different districts, and he is ushering us through this consent decree right now. But I want you to hear from him because he knew Trevor, and he knows what the sacrifice means every single day that they put the uniform on. Nick.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Williams. So on behalf of the New Orleans Police Department, Superintendent Kirkpatrick, I just want to kind of say a few words about what the police department's thoughts are on this verdict and the hard work that you and your team did. You know, there was a lot of work that went into this case. There was a lot of work that went into this prosecution. But the people of New Orleans should know that this is the kind of work that's done day in, day out between our two departments. The New Orleans Police Department and the Attorney's Office, we don't have any light between us. We are working together to bring people accountable, to hold people accountable and bring them to justice when we need to do so. And in this case, it was one of our own. It was a member of the New Orleans Police Department who sacrificed himself for our community. And our community, we are grateful that this verdict came back the way it did. We're grateful for the support of the community. But we are mostly grateful for the sacrifice that he and his family made. You know, he was with us for a few years after he was shot, but he was never able to come back to work, and his family had to struggle with that. And this community certainly should not forget the sacrifices that both Trevor made and his partner, Brooke, made. Trevor was a young rookie detective when I took over young rookie officer when I took over the 8th District, and I was proud to see the officer that he became over the years. And as proud as I was to serve with him, I'm even more proud that his memory will kind of continue on, that the members of this community and this department and the District Attorney's Office are not going to let his memory kind of fade into the background. So as we stand here today, again, thank you. This was a very, very difficult case, but it is a good demonstration as to how the police department and the District Attorney's Office work together on all of these difficult cases. And this was not, something that should be forgotten. So with that, thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. The New Orleans Police Department, their leadership and the rank and file, they're a pretty humble bunch. But I need to make it really clear, I've said this many times, this is the best department in America today. There have been a number of consent decrees in different cities throughout the years. None have run to the goals of a consent decree and met them more than the New Orleans Police Department. Nobody can handle major crowds like the New Orleans Police Department. They are nationally applauded over and over again throughout this country for what they do. But I want to go a step further. Some of you may remember, some of you may not remember in 2020 when you covered this brutal attack in the French Quarter. There were public cameras and there were private cameras of when this defendant was detained. This wasn't some situation where the New Orleans Police Department broke rules because one of their own was wounded. This department treated this defendant with more humanity than he showed that day. Every step of the way, every interaction with this violent defendant and the NOPD, it was constitutional, it was humane. In fact, there was a concern that he might be having a medical moment, and the detectives who detained him turned him on his side to make sure that he had air, to make sure that his airways were not constricted. And I think it's worth showing that footage again to show the level of respect, the compassion, the training that the NOPD is using, whether it is a rookie or whether it is a veteran officer. It is unprecedented in this country today, and I think it's important for Judge Morgan, for consent decree minors, and even more so for the community to realize how this department is operating. And as Nick said to you just now, this is a very hard case. Taking the evidence and showing it to the members of the jury to explain to them how an individual died 2 years later from a person's actions in 2020 is very, very difficult. And it was a pleasure to try this case and an honor alongside one of my veteran prosecutors, William Dieters. But he put together a truly excellent case. It was not easy to do. William, it's an honor to work with you, and I'd like for the people of this city to hear from you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Williams has done a great job of explaining just how difficult the case was, how wonderful it is that we were able to secure the guilty as charged. So what I want to take my time to do is thank literally everyone that was there that made this possible. Starting off with the NOPD, but not just the NOPD as a whole. I cannot thank the 8th District enough. The 5th District helped out. The 1st District helped out. I remember there were officers on scene from the 2nd District. Without them, without the Tulane Police Department, officers from there responded to the call for an officer down. The Sheriff's Office even had deputies on scene, and even to the citizens in the quarter that day. The humanity that was shown to not only the defendant but also the victims at that point has to be commended at this time, and we could not have done it without them. But then on top of that, I am but a small part to this. Mr. Williams played the biggest role in this, but also the other part that I want to thank is the people who were there trying this with me. I could not have done it without the investigators, Liz Garcia, Adrian Malone, and then Shelvin Ambrose, who all assisted at some point in this case, absolutely making it possible. And then on top of that, just the day-to-day things that the trial assistant DJ was able to do. I could not have done this case without her. And then down to the victim witness coordinator, Tasha. This is a team effort. It was a team victory, and one of the things that I'm happy to be able to say here today is thank you to the people of New Orleans for the guilty as charged that you gave us. Justice was served that day, and I cannot thank you enough. Thank you.
William, thank you for your work.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Finally, I just send my deepest gratitude to Officer Abney's family for trusting in us. This was a very difficult process for them. One, just tending to his needs and working through the system. I also want to thank Holly Freeman and Michelle Woodford, who head up our OSINT team, because the work that they do in using open source intelligence data to build stronger cases requires them to look at all the cases we try so that they learn something from each of those things to take back to the toolbox so that their team can work more efficiently for my ADAs who are putting these cases together. Holly, Michelle, thank you for studying everyone's work so that we can refine this and continue to drive crime numbers down. As we approach the sentencing phase, we remain resolute in our commitment to securing accountability. This verdict is not only a conviction, it is a message to all the people in this parish that we will not tolerate acts of violence against those who dedicate themselves to protecting us, to serving us. It is not an easy job. We stand united in this mission to ensure justice and build a safer New Orleans, and we're doing exactly that, and we will continue to make strides and gains that are turning national heads. Micah?
We'll do on-topic questions only. We'll start with WDSU.
Well, today was obviously you've been in contact with the family of those victims. What are they just feeling right now? Highlight that a little bit more.
Ariel, you know, I know that as we worked through this process, we had trial dates that were continued. We were prepared to try this case when Officer Abney was still with us. And that is a very different case than after he succumbed to his injuries. And that's a tough roller coaster for this family to go through. I don't know that they were hopeful that we would get convictions for a murder case, given the complexities of this. They were deeply pleased with the verdict. They were deeply pleased with the tentativeness of this jury. And, you know, they came every day. This is not easy. They don't get their son back. They don't get their brother back. They don't get their husband back. But they do get a measure of justice. And they got it from the people of New Orleans that were on that jury that heard all these facts. Thank you, Ariel. WGNO.
Hi.
Hey.
I know you talked about it was a tough case. Can you talk about what do you think was the strongest piece of evidence? Was there a moment where maybe you saw the looks on the jury's face where you feel like, okay, we have this?
You know, I don't think there was any one thing. There were a lot of little things. And all of those little things, whether William was asking the questions, whether I was asking the questions in that courtroom, they all led to what this defendant's purpose was out there that day, right? The defense attorneys tried to argue that he was in the fit of some sort of delirium, that he was out of his mind at the time of this incident, but he ran immediately. He ran away from the officers. He walked at moments. He sprinted at moments. He disposed of the firearm. All the things that that showed that he knew what he had done. Right? There was one of the doctors testified about his capacity at the time, and that it must have been some sort of delirium, because why would someone with no record do this? Well, people do a lot of mean things to their fellow human beings every single day, and the people behind me see that every single day, and it's not always rational, and you can't always put your finger on it, but we were able to show that he knew what he was doing, and he meant to take a life. He meant to take more lives that day. So there wasn't one thing, but we were able to show that every camera angle supported the fact that he knew what he was doing. The DNA on the gun was able to link that, although he tried to dispose of it, which is why I'm pushing so hard to make sure Dr. Kelly has everything she has in that crime lab when it's up and going, because Orleans Parish juries, they want to see the evidence. They want it to be compelling. And we had it in this particular case.
You know, a few years ago, violence against police officers was like really, really high. And since then, do you feel like that maybe has calmed down, even though that it is a very difficult, dangerous job? Do you feel like that threat has maybe calmed down a little bit?
You know, I pray it has. I pray it has. I know, you know, we talked about this in this jury trial. 2020 was a tough time for every single person on this earth because of the isolation, because of the self-induced coma we all put ourselves in to get past the pandemic. But it was a really, really tough time on the law enforcement community because of what some officers did in some parts of the country. No officer in New Orleans did anything like that. But someone came in from out of state with hate in his heart because of all that stuff that was brewing up in 2020. And there were a lot more targeted attacks like that then. The numbers of those have gone down. I hope that citizens realize that these men and women that put on these uniforms, they don't make a lot of money, they don't get a lot of pat on the backs, and they only do it to protect and serve. So I pray that from your mouth to God's ears, those numbers continue to go down and we don't see anything else like this. Thanks, everybody.